Close your eyes and imagine something incredible. While you've been alive maybe a few decades at most, there was a human species that walked this planet for 2 million years. Not thousands, not hundreds of thousands. 2 million years. Let that sink in for a second, modern humans. We've only been around for 300,000 years. We're basically infants in evolutionary time. But these ancient relatives of ours, they were the undisputed champions of human history. They survived ice ages, massive climate shifts, terrifying predators, and challenges we can barely imagine today. And here's the kicker. They weren't primitive cavemen grunting and stumbling around. Recent discoveries have completely shattered that myth. These people built shelters. They controlled fire. They cared for their sick and elderly. They created art. They might have even sailed across dangerous ocean straits to reach remote islands. Meet Homo erectus, literally the most successful human species that ever lived. Right now you might be lying in bed trying to fall asleep. Or maybe you're having your morning coffee in Berlin. Or winding down after work in Boston. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, you're about to discover a story that will change how you think about being human. Because here's what nobody tells you in school. We are not the pinnacle of human evolution. We're actually the new kids on the block. And we have a lot to learn from our ancestors who thrived for 20 times longer than we've even existed. Think about your entire life. Now multiply that by everyone you've ever known. Now multiply that by every generation going back to the pyramids, to the invention of writing, to the dawn of civilization. You're still not even close to how long Homo erectus ruled this planet. They walked the same earth you're standing on right now. They looked up at the same stars. They felt love, fear, pain, and joy. They raised their children, told stories around campfires, and fought to survive in a world far more dangerous than ours. And they didn't just survive. They absolutely crushed it for longer than any human species before or since. Want to know something mind-blowing? The last Homo erectus populations were still alive just 100,000 years ago. That means they were here at the same time our species was spreading across the planet. Did they ever meet? Did our ancestors look into the eyes of these ancient humans who had already endured for nearly 2 million years? The evidence is murky, but there's a twist you won't believe that involves head lice, of all things. And the story gets even wilder from there. What did they really look like? Could they talk? Why did their skulls look like they were built to take punches? How did they lose their body hair? And what does that have to do with developing bigger brains? Did they create art? Practice medicine? Feel emotions like we do? And here's the biggest question of all. If they were so incredibly successful, surviving longer than any other human species, then why aren't they still here today? The answers will take you on a journey through 2 million years of triumph, adaptation, mystery, and ultimately, disappearance. This isn't just their story. It's the story of what it truly means to be human and what it takes to survive on this planet for the long haul. Let's dive in. Picture Earth 2 million years in the past. A remarkable human ancestor emerged, not our direct species, but beings who would outlast us by nearly 20-fold. This chronicle transcends mere fascination. It captures humanity's most enduring triumph against all odds. Enter Homo erectus, history's undisputed champion among human species. For those drifting off to sleep with this narrative, that's precisely the intention behind these recordings. Consider subscribing and sharing. Your location and local hour scanning comments reveals a fascinating global tapestry. Berliners at their morning coffee, Bostonians winding down for rest, all simultaneously engaged. Why does their journey command such attention? These ancestors inhabited Earth across an extraordinary 2 million year expanse. 2 million years, such temporal vastness defies human comprehension. Consider this perspective. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, emerged merely 300,000 years ago. We're evolutionary newcomers, meanwhile. These ancient relatives commanded landscapes across 3 continents. Throughout an era that reduces our entire timeline to insignificance, Prepare for a temporal expedition exploring how these prehistoric humans existed, their physical characteristics, cognitive capabilities, and their profound significance in understanding human nature. You'll learn why scientists frequently designate Homo erectus as humanity's first genuine representatives, a species resembling us more closely than any predecessor. Their appearance, locomotion, and probable communication methods showed surprising parallels to ours. Here's something extraordinary. They weren't merely unsophisticated cavern inhabitants fumbling with rudimentary implements. Recent archaeological findings reveal astonishing advanced abilities from manufacturing intricate stone devices to constructing dwellings and demonstrating care for aged and infirm community members. Their capacity for navigating 2 million years of environmental flux and formidable predators fundamentally established our contemporary existence. Let's contextualize their extraordinary tenure. Homo erectus emerged roughly 2 million years ago, persisting until approximately 100,000 years ago. Indeed, the final populations thrived on Earth simultaneously as our species began planetary expansion. The youngest known Homo erectus remains originate from Ngandong on Java Island, Indonesia, where researchers unearthed a dozen cranial caps and 2 tibias dating between 108,000 and 117,000 years ago. This naturally prompts an intriguing question. Did Homo erectus and Homo sapiens ever encounter one another? Did our immediate forebears ever meet these ancient inhabitants who dominated Earth for epochs preceding us? This tantalizing possibility has captivated researchers for decades. Evidence shows Homo sapiens departed Africa toward Europe and Asia approximately 90,000 years ago. Actually, emerging discoveries continually revise this timeline backward. A Homo sapiens fossil recovered from Maslia Cave in Israel dates between 177,000 and 194,000 years ago, indicating far earlier African departure than previously acknowledged. Yet here's the fascinating detail. The earliest Homo sapiens evidence on Java, Homo erectus's final stronghold, dates between 60,000 and 70,000 years ago. Unfortunately, Homo erectus apparently didn't survive long enough on Java for modern human interaction. Moreover, no fossil evidence worldwide conclusively demonstrates direct encounters between erectus and contemporary humans. However, an unexpected revelation emerges from an improbable source. Head lice, indeed. Research published in the Public Library of Science Biology reveals human head lice descend from 2 ancient lineages, diverging approximately 118 million years ago, when Homo erectus flourished, but long before modern Homo sapiens existed. One lineage, found globally, experienced population bottlenecks around 100,000 years ago, coinciding with modern human expansion. The other lineage, exclusively American, remained separate throughout 118 million years. The split between these groups corresponds with early hominin divergences, suggesting co-evolution with distinct human species. If these lice genuinely evolved alongside Homo erectus 118 million years ago, then their presence in modern humans implies direct transfer requiring physical contact between Homo erectus and early Homo sapiens. Yet absent fossil evidence supporting direct interactions, scientists remain skeptical. The lice evidence presents one among many fascinating enigmas surrounding these ancient humans that researchers continue investigating. The inaugural Homo erectus fossils were discovered in 1891 by Dutch researcher Eugene Dubois, after years searching Indonesia for what contemporaneous scientists termed the missing evolutionary link between apes and humans. Dubois excavated a well-preserved cranial cap at Trinil on Java Island's Solo River. The specimen exhibited pronounced brow ridges, receding forehead, and angled posterior skull features Dubois claimed represented the evolutionary connection between apes and modern humans. Other scientists initially rejected his interpretation, but Dubois achieved vindication when comparable Homo erectus fossils emerged in China during the 1920s and 1930s. These discoveries confirmed a widespread human species inhabiting vast territories across Africa, Asia, and Europe among the most remarkable aspects of Homo erectus was their evolutionary progression toward enhanced brain capacity. Early lineage members possessed cranial volumes of 600 to 800 cubic centimeters, like the Dmanisi skull designated D2700 found at George's Dmanisi site, whose proportions more closely resembled earlier Australopithecines than subsequent humans. Over time, confronting novel environmental challenges and adapting to diverse habitats, their evolution witnessed dramatic brain size and complexity development. Middle Pleistocene Homo erectus crania from Africa, Asia, and Europe display volumes reaching 1,230 cubic centimeters, matching Albert Einstein's brain size. This proves remarkable because large, complex brains process and retain vastly more information, enabling sophisticated behaviors and adaptations. Homo erectus possessed distinctive appearances distinguishing them from both earlier species and modern humans. They were humanity's first members with relatively flat faces and prominent noses, features theorized to assist moisture retention when breathing arid air across varied inhabited environments. Unlike modern humans, they also exhibited flat, robust, low skulls with massive brow ridges. These pronounced brow ridges have fascinated scientists. What function did they serve? In 2004, anthropologists Noel Boaz and Russell Chochin proposed something surprising. These features resulted from cultural practices where Homo erectus fought one another with fists, stones, or clubs, settling disputes or competing for mates. Skull structure appears remarkably engineered for absorbing substantial blows. The heavy brow ridge protects eyes and transitions into a bar covering ears, connecting completely to the skull's posterior. This configuration allowed blows anywhere across these regions to dissipate effectively across the skull. Intriguingly, many fossil cranial caps display serious fractures that would normally prove debilitating, yet they also show healing signs, suggesting these individuals survived potentially fatal head traumas. Anthropologist Peter Brown suggested comparable reasoning for unusual thickening found in modern Australian Aboriginal skulls resulting from rituals practiced in Central and Southeastern Australian tribes, where adversaries struck each other with clubs until knockout. These prominent brow ridges may have functioned both as social signals, displaying strength and dominance, and practical adaptations, strengthening skulls against impacts. As humans evolved toward modern form, we gradually lost these pronounced features as social communication grew more important, allowing subtle facial emotion reading. Our entire facial structure transformed, prioritizing communication over physical protection. Their jaws also exceeded ours in robustness, large and thick without pointed chins. Dentally, Homo erectus possessed the thinnest enamel among all early human species. While enamel protects teeth when consuming hard foods, it also impedes shearing. Tough foods, their mandibles noticeably exceeded modern human and living ape thickness, allowing jaws to resist torsion during biting or chewing, potentially enabling unusually powerful eating stresses. Interestingly, their teeth exhibit higher pit frequencies in premolars and molars compared to earlier species like Homo habilis, indicating diets rich in brittle foods, possibly influenced by advanced tool use, allowing wider food range processing than predecessors. Like modern humans, Homo erectus varied widely in size, ranging from 4 feet 9 inches to 6 feet 1 inch in height and 40 to 68 kilograms in weight. This variation likely resulted from regional climate differences, mortality rates, and nutrition. Among primates, this phenotypic plasticity level, the ability showing marked physical responses to environmental stresses, proves remarkably rare, demonstrated only in modern humans and Homo erectus. Homo erectus exhibited sexual dimorphism, noticeable size differences, and sometimes other physical characteristics between males and females. Generally, male Homo erectus individuals tended toward larger, more robust builds than females. This sexual dimorphism gets inferred from fossil evidence, including skeletal size and morphology differences. Over 97 footprints dating 15 million years old, made by at least 20 individuals near Illirit, Kenya, indicate Homo erectus showed greater sexual dimorphism than modern Homo sapiens. Though less than highly dimorphic apes like gorillas and extinct species like Orontuganensis, Ardipithecus, and Paranthropus robustus, these footprints offer unique windows into important transitional periods in hominin social behavior, suggesting social structures somewhere between extreme male-dominated great ape groups and more egalitarian modern human structures. These identical footprints also reveal something remarkable about Homo erectus movement. They indicate Homo erectus was humanity's first species possessing modern human gait. The footprints and skeletal evidence suggest they possessed approximately identical limb configurations and proportions as modern humans, implying human-like locomotion far more efficient for long-distance travel than earlier human species gait. Homo erectus also pioneered human-like shoulders in our lineage, suggesting high-speed throwing capability. This adaptation would have provided major evolutionary advantages, enabling effective hurling of rocks, wooden javelins, or other weapons, facilitating large game hunting for valuable calorie-rich meat. This contrasts starkly with early hominin predecessors such as Homo habilis, who retained chimp-like shoulders ill-suited for accurate object throwing. Examining the fossil record reveals Homo erectus represented dramatic human evolutionary shifts, emergence of a species that, while still distinct from us in many respects, possessed suites of physical and cognitive adaptations that would define the human lineage for millions of years forward. These weren't merely improved versions of earlier hominins. They were revolutionary new human types equipped with bodies built for endurance, precision, and adaptability. Yet their physical adaptations were merely the beginning of what made Homo erectus remarkably successful. In our next segment, we'll explore one of their most distinctive and surprising features, their surprisingly hairless bodies, and discover how this seemingly simple adaptation may have played crucial roles in their evolutionary success, setting stages for large brain development that would eventually define our own species. We'll also delve into their remarkable tool technology, hunting strategies, and social structures, all elements helping them become evolutionary history's most successful human species. The mystery of hairlessness as primates and mammals. We humans possess distinctive traits separating us from most evolutionary cousins. Relatively hairless skin, while aquatic mammals like whales and dolphins, along with elephants, share this characteristic. Most primates and mammals typically sport furry coats. So when did humans lose body hair and why? Turns out Homo erectus was the first genus Homo member evolving this hairless condition, with studies suggesting this adaptation emerged at least 12 million years ago. But understanding why humans have significantly less body hair than other primates requires recognizing that mammalian body hair isn't merely aesthetic. It protects skin from wounds, parasites, heat, cold, and UV radiation. Why would early human species evolve losing this protective covering? The most widely accepted evolutionary explanation involves heat dissipation. When early genus Homo members transitioned from shady forest living to open savanna, losing body hair and developing more sweat glands facilitated body cooling during extended physical activity. This environmental shift also triggered major dietary changes from largely vegetarian to increasingly hunting-based. Pursuing game across hot savannas dramatically increased needs for effective body temperature regulation. Here's where it grows genuinely interesting. Anthropologist and paleobiologist Nina Yablonsky proposes that excess body heat dissipation ability through efficient sweating actually helped enable dramatic brain enlargement, the most temperature-sensitive human organ. So fur loss wasn't just about staying cool, it potentially facilitated further physical and behavioral adaptations, differentiating humans from other primates. Some researchers believe sexual selection accelerated these changes by selecting more hairless mates. Homo erectus may have accelerated changes initially triggered by natural selection pressures. This hairless adaptation raises another fascinating question. What about skin color? Most mammals have light skin covered by fur, and biologists believe early human ancestors started this way too. But this changed with Homo erectus. Genetic analysis suggests high activity in the melanocortin-1 receptor gene, producing dark skin. Dates to Homo erectus approximately 12 to 2 million years ago. Dark pigmentation, specifically melanin, served as natural sunscreen, helping prevent skin damage and reducing conditions like skin cancer in high sun exposure regions. Having dark skin would have provided survival advantages for Homo erectus by offering superior protection against intense solar rays. However, as Homo erectus populations expanded to higher latitudes with less intense sunlight, they potentially developed lighter skin, preventing vitamin D deficiency. Consider the modern human movement model. The earliest sapiens arose in Africa, under tropical sun, then migrated into Asia and expanded covering Europe. Given that Homo erectus had more time spreading across and adapting to Asia and Europe, it's reasonable assuming they would have shown similar skin tone flexibility we see in modern human populations today. Supporting this theory, a 500,000 to 300,000-year-old Homo erectus specimen from Turkey was diagnosed with the earliest known tuberculous meningitis case, condition typically exacerbated in dark-skinned people living in higher latitudes due to vitamin D deficiency. This suggests this individual may have had darker skin in an environment where lighter skin would have been advantageous, perhaps indicating that skin color adaptation was still evolving in these northern Homo erectus populations. Another fascinating aspect of Homo erectus biology relates to brain development. A 18-million-year-old Homo erectus specimen named Mojokerto-1 found in Java, who died at approximately 1 year of age, already had 72 to 84% of average adult brain size. Compare this to modern human 1-year-olds who typically reach only around 50% of their adult brain size. This reveals something remarkable. Homo erectus had faster brain growth trajectories, more similar to great apes than to modern humans. This indicates Homo erectus was probably not cognitively comparable to modern humans, and that our extended childhood and long dependency period, due to great amounts of time required for brain maturation, evolved much later in human evolution, perhaps. In the modern human and Neanderthal last common ancestor, while Homo erectus might not have reached modern human intellectual capacities, they would have still been at the cognitive hierarchy's top on the planet during their time. Their larger brains and advanced tools suggest problem-solving abilities and social complexity far beyond earlier human species. Some scientists distinguish between African erectus, which they call Homo ergaster, and Asian erectus, which they call Homo erectus sensu stricto, because of slightly different characteristics. For example, African individuals' faces tend to be higher and less broad across eye orbits, but it's worth noting modern humans today also show regional physical characteristic variations, and we don't get split into different species categories. Many scientists now simply group them together as Homo erectus, which not only makes more taxonomic sense, but also simplifies discussions about their evolutionary history, origins, and coexistence. Speaking of evolution, where did Homo erectus come from? It's generally agreed that Homo erectus descended from an earlier species, Homo habilis, an early genus Homo member, who still possessed ape-like features including long arms and moderately prognathic faces. This transition occurred roughly 2 million years ago, however. This straightforward evolutionary path has been questioned because Homo habilis and Homo erectus fossils indicate they coexisted for at least 500,000 years. This overlap suggests either that a specific isolated Homo habilis group evolved into Homo erectus while other Homo habilis populations continued unchanged, or that Homo erectus might have descended from an early, as yet undiscovered primitive Homo species. It's also heavily debated where Homo erectus evolved, as fossils dating to around 2 million years ago have been found in both Africa and China. A 2011 study suggested that it was Homo habilis who first reached West Asia from Africa, and that early Homo erectus developed there before dispersing to East Asia, Southeast Asia, and back into Africa, where they eventually evolved into modern humans. Other studies have suggested that Homo erectus developed in Africa, where distinct populations eventually led to the emergence of later hominin species such as Homo heidelbergensis, and ultimately to our own species, Homo sapiens, at the beginning of its time range around 19 million years ago. Homo erectus coexisted in East Africa with several other early human species, including Homo rudolfensis, Homo habilis, and Paranthropus boisei, sometimes fossils from these different species have even been found at the same sites, suggesting they shared territories and resources. At the end of its time range around 100,000 years ago, Homo erectus possibly coexisted with Homo floresiensis in Indonesia, given the time frame and geographic position. There's also a good chance they may have interacted with and even interbred with the mysterious Denisovans in Southeast Asia. This could potentially explain the ghost genomes detected in Denisovan remains, which scientists have been able to extract from just a pinky bone and 2 molars found in Denisova Cave in Siberia. Hunting and gathering strategies. How did Homo erectus hunt and gather food? Persistence hunting has been suggested as a key strategy for meat acquisition, thanks to their bipedalism, slender build, and hairless skin that facilitated effective temperature regulation through sweating during prolonged pursuits. Homo erectus could potentially sustain running for up to 55 hours without water. This would have given them significant advantages in outrunning prey, establishing them as highly successful hunters. Their hunting strategies and prey selection would have depended on available resources in their respective regions and habitats. But Homo erectus is believed to have been versatile hunter-gatherers, preying on various animals for sustenance. Evidence suggests they hunted birds, deer, wild boar, and even elephants. In 1988, scientists found elephant remains and numerous dismembered skeletons of giant, now extinct baboons, along with 400 flake tools near Alarvisali, Kenya, dating from between 790,000 and 992,000 years ago. Many bones had obvious cut marks, and the animal's limbs were not present. If these animals had indeed been hunted rather than scavenged, it would have required great skill to bring down such powerful creatures, suggesting Homo erectus hunted in cooperative groups, which in turn indicates they likely had some form of primitive language or communication system. It can reasonably be supposed that, as with present-day hunter-gatherers such as African sand bushmen and Australian aboriginals, meat from hunting formed only part of the Homo erectus diet. Other food sources may have included snakes, birds and their eggs, locusts, scorpions, centipedes, tortoises, rodents, hedgehogs, fish, and crustaceans. Even children could have caught many of these, as they still do in Africa's Kalahari Desert today, before being allowed to accompany older males on more dangerous hunts. Plant foods such as fleshy leaves, fruits, nuts, roots, and tubers must also have been important in their diet. Accumulations of hackberry seeds, for example, were found in the Zhaokudian cave deposits in China, where the famous Peking man Homo erectus fossils were discovered. There seems little doubt that Homo erectus was omnivorous, an opportunistic eating strategy offering maximum flexibility. Modern humans are the most opportunistic of all living primates, and Homo erectus was likely one of the earliest human species developing this attribute, endowing the species with adaptability and evolutionary flexibility. Though Homo erectus were skilled hunters for their time, they would have also undoubtedly been prey for fierce predators that shared their environments. 2/3 of Homo erectus fossils found in Longgupo, China, contain damage consistent with that caused by carnivore teeth, most likely those of hyenas. One well-fossilized crushed Homo erectus skull found at Longdadong has puncture marks perfectly, matching the teeth of the extinct giant hyena Pashikrocuta brevirostris, or short-faced hyena, another cave in Zhaokudian, China. contains skeletal elements of Homo erectus individuals scattered over areas of the cave floor up to 9 meters in diameter. Analysis showed that 67% of these Homo erectus remains showed bite marks or other modifications attributed to large mammalian carnivores. Homo erectus likely experienced intense competition and constant vigilance due to the presence of dangerous predators, prompting heightened states of caution and fear. Their ability to form groups and collaborate for protection would have been crucial advantages, but for some unlucky individuals, they would have definitely ended up as meals for ancient predators. Revolutionary tool technology. What tools did Homo erectus use? They started with simple but effective hand axes for hunting and butchering animals. But later in their evolutionary timeline, these hand axes became increasingly sophisticated, marking significant improvements in their tool technology and showing the mental advances these early humans made. The earliest hand axes associated with Homo erectus are tools of the type found in Olduvai Gorge, Tanzania, where they were discovered in large quantities. These older tools were characterized by their simple construction, predominantly using core forms. These cores were river pebbles or similar rocks that had been struck by spherical hammerstones to cause conchoidal fractures, removing flakes from one surface to create an edge and often a sharp tip. The blunt end of these tools is called the proximal surface and the sharp end is the distal surface. Older ones are percussion technology, grasping the proximal surface. The hominin would bring the distal surface down hard on an object they wish to detach or shatter, such as a bone or tuber. Skip ahead a couple 100,000 years in Homo erectus tool-making evolution, and you get more complex hand axes called Aculean, named after the site of Saint-Achille in France. These tools developed around 176 million years ago. Aculean tools were characterized not by a core, but by a biface stone tool worked on both sides. The most notable form was the hand axe. The earliest Aculean axes appeared in the West Turkana area of Kenya, and around the same time in southern Africa. Aculean axes are larger, heavier, and have sharp cutting edges that are chipped from opposite sides into a teardrop shape, in contrast to an Oldowan tool, which is the result of a fortuitous and probably extemporaneous operation to obtain one sharp edge on a stone. An Aculean tool is the planned result of a sophisticated manufacturing process. The manufacturer begins with a blank, either a larger stone or a slab knocked off a larger rock. From this blank, the maker removes large flakes to be used as cores. Standing a core on edge on an anvil stone, the maker hits the exposed edge with centripetal blows of a hard hammer to roughly shape the implement. Then the piece must be worked over again or retouched with a soft hammer of wood or bone to produce a tool finely chipped all over, consisting of two convex surfaces intersecting in a sharp edge. These more complex Aculean hand axes endured for more than 1 million years with little change from the earliest versions, indicating their efficiency and suggesting there was no need for improvement. Though fossil remains of the tool makers themselves aren't always preserved alongside the tools, these hand axes clearly archive the evolution of innovation, craftsmanship, acquired intelligence, and social behavior in a pre-modern human community over a million-year interval. Homo erectus produced other tools as well. Evidence shows they crafted implements from shells at sites in Sangiran and Trinil. Spherical stones measuring 6 to 12 centimeters and 24 to 47 centimeters in diameter are frequently found in African and Chinese lower Paleolithic sites, and these were potentially used as bolas-throwing weapons, consisting of weights connected by cords used to entangle prey. Shelters and architecture beyond tools. Did Homo erectus construct shelters? Evidence suggests they did build structures for protection. There are indications that Homo erectus constructed branch huts up to 50 feet long for shelter, sometimes with stone slabs or animal skins for floors. The first houses were thought to be simple windbreaks made of animal skins stretched over a frame. The oldest recognized shelter from this era was found at the site of Terra Amata, near Nice, France. In 1966, The shelter was a collection of 12 individual oval structures that ranged from 26 feet all the way to 49 feet in length, with widths between 13 and 20 feet. Homo erectus used fire to keep warm, and the huts within these shelters were ringed with small rocks to form a fire line around the edge of dug pits for wood. Another remarkable site was discovered near present-day Bilsingsalben in eastern Germany, where ancient humans, thought to be Homo erectus, though some argue they may have been Homo heidelbergensis, lived around 370,000 years ago. They constructed shelters similar to those of Bushmen in southern Africa, circular structures with bone and stone foundations between 9 and 13 feet across. In the middle of each circle, archaeologists found an elephant tusk, which they speculated might have served as a center post. These discoveries point to a species with far more complex behavior than previously imagined, one capable of modifying their environment to create protected living spaces, using fire for warmth and protection, and organizing their living areas in ways that suggest social structure and cooperation. The mastery of fire, one of the most revolutionary aspects of Homo erectus culture, was their mastery of fire. The controlled use of fire fundamentally transformed human evolution, allowing our ancestors to keep predators at bay, extend their waking hours beyond sunset, cook their food, and eventually colonize colder regions of the planet. Being able to produce and maintain fire meant that Homo erectus gained unprecedented control over their environment and diet in ways no previous species had achieved. Cooking food was particularly transformative. Cooked meat is not only safer with fewer pathogens, but it's also far easier to digest. The process of cooking breaks down tough fibers in meat and plant foods, allowing for more efficient nutrient extraction with less digestive effort. This may have contributed to the reduction in gut size that we see in the Homo erectus fossil record compared to earlier hominins, potentially freeing up energy for brain development. But exactly when our ancestors first harnessed fire remains one of paleoanthropology's most heated debates. Why? Because campfires very rarely preserve well over long periods of time, let alone for hundreds of thousands or millions of years. Despite these preservation challenges, Homo erectus is widely credited as the first human ancestor to have used fire, though the precise timing remains contentious. The earliest claimed fire sites include Kubi Fora in Kenya, dating to approximately 15 million years ago, and Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, with evidence suggesting controlled fire use as early as 17 million years ago. However, these early dates remain controversial among researchers, with some arguing the evidence isn't conclusive. The first Homo erectus firekeepers are thought to have simply transported and maintained naturally occurring fires for extended periods rather than creating fire themselves. They might have opportunistically collected fire from lightning strikes or natural brush fires, then carefully maintained it for as long as possible. This would require knowledge of slow-burning materials like dung that could sustain flames for extended periods. Interestingly, fire becomes markedly more abundant in the wider archaeological record after 400,000 to 300,000 years ago. This significant increase could indicate either some advancement in fire-making techniques or perhaps suggest that our human ancestors only opportunistically used fire until this time when they finally mastered reliable fire-starting methods. It's entirely possible that fire-starting technology was invented, lost, reinvented, and independently discovered multiple times by different Homo erectus communities, rather than being invented in one place and spreading throughout their range. The challenges of preserving fire-making tools in the archaeological record make this difficult to determine with certainty. The earliest conclusive evidence of hearths, deliberately constructed fire pits, comes from Gesher Banat Yaakov in Israel, dating to over 790,000 years ago. What makes this site particularly compelling is that fire is recorded in multiple archaeological layers in an area close to water, both characteristics that would be uncharacteristic of natural wildfires, strongly suggesting intentional controlled use. The advent of controlled fire use had profound social implications as well. The long history of people sitting around campfires telling stories likely started with Homo erectus, and this practice would have had a massive effect on the evolution of social capabilities and possibly the complexity of human communication systems. Gathered around the safety and warmth of a fire in the evening, early humans would have had new opportunities for social bonding, knowledge sharing, and collective planning. Some researchers have proposed that increased social activity around campfires facilitated the need for more complex ideas to be communicated, potentially driving the development of more sophisticated language capabilities. The firelight would have extended waking hours into the night, creating time for social activities beyond mere survival tasks, perhaps the beginnings of culture as we understand it. Violence and cannibalism beyond these technological and social advances. Archaeological evidence reveals darker aspects of Homo erectus society that force us to reconsider our views of these ancient humans. Multiple Homo erectus skulls found in India show a large number of head wounds. Were these caused by warfare between groups, by hunting accidents, by competition within groups? It's difficult to say with certainty, but they suggest violence was present in Homo erectus society. Even more provocatively, some archaeological sites contain human bones with cut marks similar to those made with Homo erectus tools on butchered animals. These have been found in sites ranging from South Africa to Croatia, leading some scientists to speculate that cannibalism may have been part of Homo erectus behavior for hundreds of thousands of years. This wouldn't be entirely surprising from an evolutionary perspective. Evidence suggests that even Homo sapiens engaged in cannibalistic practices in the not-so-distant past in Goff's Cave in the United Kingdom. Anthropologists discovered bite marks on 15,000-year-old human bones that appear to show deliberate consumption. The marks suggest the ancient consumers were trying to scrape off every millimeter of nutritious muscle. Researchers also found hundreds of filleting marks and ritualistic incisions on bones, and even unearthed skulls apparently modified for use as cups. Similarly, Homo erectus skulls dated to be 500,000 years old found in caves at Longdushan in China appear to have been severed from the body and preserved, presumably as trophies. Some researchers speculate the purpose may have been ritualistic, perhaps to symbolically obtain the strength or qualities of the deceased. However, critics of these claims suggest the marks on the skulls might have been made by giant hyenas rather than other hominins. Language and communication. Could Homo erectus talk? This question touches on one of the most crucial transitions in human evolution, the development of language. Some scientists have theorized that Homo erectus must have possessed some form of rudimentary language because they needed to communicate, to organize hunts, and pass on information about tool-making. However, the parts of the Homo erectus brain associated with reasoning, symbolism, and imagination appear to have been relatively underdeveloped compared to modern humans. The frontal lobe, where complex thinking takes place in modern humans, was comparatively small in Homo erectus. Additionally, the spinal cord canal in Homo erectus vertebrae was narrower than in modern humans, suggesting limited nerve pathways between the brain and the muscles controlling breathing and vocalization. Many researchers believe Homo erectus didn't possess the FOXP2 gene, often called the language gene, in its modern form. This gene, which plays a crucial role in the neural development necessary for language and speech, is found in its current form only in modern humans and Neanderthals, based on these anatomical constraints. Many scientists think Homo erectus likely communicated with simple vocalizations, gestures, and facial expressions, rather than complex language with grammar and syntax. They may have used a limited vocabulary of distinct sounds to convey basic information about food sources, dangers, or social status. Yet even in this basic form, the communication among Homo erectus would have represented a significant advance beyond previous hominin species. The knowledge required to craft Acheulean stone tools, for instance, would have been difficult to transmit without some form of Demonstrative communication combined with vocal instruction. If we think of language capabilities on a spectrum, with modern human language being the most complex, Homo erectus might represent a crucial intermediate stage, not yet capable of the abstract and symbolic communication we take for granted, but far more sophisticated than anything that had come before. In essence, if modern humans represent the pinnacle of language evolution, comparable to today's advanced technology, then Homo erectus might be likened to the Model T Ford of language, rudimentary by our standards, but revolutionary for its time and laying crucial foundations for what would follow art and symbolism. Did Homo erectus create art? Until recently, the earliest evidence of geometric art was dated from 70,000 to 100,000 years ago. Scratch patterns found in South African caves created by early Homo sapiens. These engravings have been interpreted as signs of behavioral modernity, our species' unique cognitive journey into a sophisticated world of abstraction and symbolism. But a remarkable discovery has pushed the origins of art back much further, potentially to Homo erectus. A zigzag pattern found on a fossilized shell from Java, Indonesia, has been dated to approximately 430,000 years ago, making it potentially the world's earliest known engraving and demonstrating that Homo erectus possessed both the manual dexterity and possibly the symbolic thinking necessary for artistic expression. The pattern consists of a zigzag line with 3 sharp turns producing an M shape, a set of more superficial parallel lines, and another zigzag with 2 turns producing a V shape. A study conducted by marine biologist Josephine Jordans and her colleagues concluded that the morphology of the zigzags, internal morphology of the grooves, and differential roughness of the surrounding shell area demonstrates that the grooves were deliberately engraved and predate shell burial and weathering. Other potential evidence of Homo erectus artistic expression includes the Middle Pleistocene Venus of Tantan and Venus of Barakat Ram objects, postulated to have been modified by Homo erectus to resemble human forms. These items were mostly formed by natural weathering but appear to have been slightly modified to emphasize certain grooves, suggesting hairlines, limbs, and eyes. The former has traces of pigments on the front side, possibly indicating it was intentionally colored. Homo erectus was also the earliest human species known to have intentionally collected red-colored pigments, namely ochre. Pigments and early aesthetics record as early as the Middle Pleistocene, with ochre lumps at Olduvai Gorge, Tanzania, associated with the 14-million-year-old Olduvai hominid 9, and at Ambrona, Spain, which dates to 424,000 to 374,000 years ago. In both locations, the ochre appears to have been struck by a hammerstone and purposefully shaped and trimmed. At Terra Amata in France, which dates to 425,000 to 325,000 years ago, red, yellow, and brown ochres were recovered in association with pole structures. The ochre was probably heated to achieve such a wide color range, since it's unclear if Homo erectus could have used ochre for any practical application. These findings might indicate that Homo erectus was the earliest human species to have exhibited a sense of aesthetics and to think beyond simple survival needs. Seafaring capabilities. One of the most surprising capabilities attributed to Homo erectus is seafaring. Peculiar artifacts discovered on isolated islands that were never connected to mainland areas during the Pleistocene may show seafaring by Homo erectus as early as 1 million years ago. In Indonesia, they had arrived on the islands of Flores, Timor, and Roti, which would have necessitated crossing the Lombok Strait, also known as Wallace's Line, at least before 800,000 years ago. This crossing wouldn't have been easy. The Lombok Strait is 24 miles wide, 250 meters deep, and has a fierce current due to its location as a main channel for the Indonesian through-flow. The maritime connection between 2 of the world's great oceans, the Indian and the Pacific. These oceans have differences in temperature and sea levels, creating treacherous water conditions. If Homo erectus truly did cross this strait, it suggests They had the capability to build sophisticated watercraft and navigate dangerous waters, a level of technological achievement far beyond what was previously attributed to them. This would also strongly indicate advanced communication abilities. If they could coordinate to paddle to remote islands, they must have had some form of spoken language to plan and execute such challenging voyages. Healthcare and compassion. Archaeological evidence also suggests Homo erectus may have practiced forms of healthcare and social support. The earliest probable example of community care for sick or injured individuals is a 177 million-year-old Homo erectus specimen from Georgia who had lost all but one tooth due to age or gum disease, the earliest example of severe chewing impairment in the fossil record, yet this individual survived for several years afterward. Unable to chew tough foods, they probably relied on soft plant or animal foods, possibly with assistance from other group members. Another compelling case is a 15 million-year-old juvenile specimen dubbed the Turkana boy, who was diagnosed with juvenile spinal disc herniation. Because this individual was still growing, the condition caused some scoliosis. These conditions typically cause recurrent lower back pain and sciatica pain running down the leg and likely restricted activities like walking, bending, and other daily movements. The fact that this young person survived into adolescence, despite these limitations, suggests some form of community care and support. A 1 million to 700,000-year-old Javanese specimen presents a noticeable osteophyte bone spur on the femur, likely resulting from Paget's disease of bone and osteopetrosis, abnormal bone thickening. These conditions probably resulted from skeletal fluorosis caused by ingestion of food contaminated by fluorine-filled volcanic ash. As the specimen was found in ash-filled strata, this individual would have had significant difficulty walking and gathering food, representing a net negative to their group in purely survival terms. Yet they lived for years with these injuries, again providing evidence of advanced group care. For perspective, livestock that grazes on volcanic ash-ridden fields typically dies of acute fluorine intoxication within days or weeks. The survival of this Homo erectus individual with similar exposure suggests intentional care from others in their group. These cases of apparent health care in Homo erectus populations reveal something profound about their social structure. Rather than abandoning sick or injured members who could no longer contribute fully to group survival, as might be expected in a society focused solely on immediate survival needs, Homo erectus groups appear to have supported their vulnerable members, allowing them to survive despite serious health challenges. This suggests levels of compassion, social bonding, and perhaps even a rudimentary understanding of caregiving that goes far beyond the stereotypical caveman image of early humans. It indicates that some of our most deeply held human values, caring for the sick and vulnerable, may have origins stretching back nearly 2 million years, long before our own species emerged. The path to extinction, what ultimately happened to Homo erectus. After thriving for nearly 2 million years, an almost unimaginable span of time, compared to our own species' brief existence, Homo erectus eventually disappeared from the fossil record. But the question of why they went extinct remains a subject of ongoing research and debate. The extinction was likely due to multiple factors, but the main theory centers on a combination of climate change and competition from later, more advanced human species, such as Homo heidelbergensis, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and eventually modern humans. A team of researchers discovered that Homo erectus lost a significant portion of their habitable climate niche just before they disappeared from the fossil record. This critical insight helps explain their eventual extinction after such a remarkably long reign. Species generally thrive when they have large, interconnected areas at their disposal, but when livable regions shrink and fragment into small, geographically isolated patches, species enter what ecologists call an extinction vortex, a downward spiral toward disappearance. These reductions in habitable area resulted from sudden climatic changes, The research team found that Homo erectus went extinct during the last glacial period, which began approximately 115,000 years ago, likely the coldest climate conditions the species had ever experienced throughout their long evolutionary history. Unlike later human species like Neanderthals who developed specialized biological and cultural adaptations for extreme cold, Homo erectus appears to have lacked the cognitive flexibility and technological innovations necessary to survive such dramatic environmental shifts. Their tool technology remained relatively unchanged for hundreds of thousands of years, suggesting a certain conservatism in their approach to environmental challenges. The final holdout of Homo erectus was on the island of Java in Indonesia, where they persisted after disappearing elsewhere. This extended survival in Java can be explained by the island's unique geography and climate. Being closer to the equator, Java experienced less dramatic temperature fluctuations during glacial periods. Additionally, its isolation protected these final Homo erectus populations from competition with more advanced human species that were expanding across mainland Asia. But even this last refuge eventually became uninhabitable for them. As the climate shifted, Java's environment transformed from the open woodland habitat associated with Homo erectus to expanding rainforest. These dense forests would have presented entirely different challenges for hunting, gathering, and movement challenges that Homo erectus, with their relatively static technology and behavioral patterns, may have been unable to overcome. One controversial study even suggested that laziness and conservative tendencies contributed to their demise. Researchers pointed to sites in the Sunda region of Indonesia, where Homo erectus used local low-quality stone for tools, rather than traveling slightly farther to obtain better materials that would have produced more effective implements. This apparent reluctance to innovate or exert additional effort for improved outcomes might have become maladaptive as environmental conditions changed. However, this interpretation has been criticized by many paleoanthropologists as imposing modern value judgments on ancient hominins who operated within entirely different constraints and pressures. It's crucial to recognize that the concept of extinction might not be the most accurate way to describe what happened to Homo erectus. Many researchers now think that Homo erectus didn't simply die off, but instead evolved into new species of hominins like Homo heidelbergensis in some regions. This evolution likely involved interbreeding with other hominin species as they came into contact, creating complex patterns of genetic exchange that are only now beginning to be understood through ancient DNA analysis. The story of Homo erectus raises profound questions about human evolution and the nature of species boundaries. Rather than viewing human evolution as a linear progression from one species to the next, the evidence increasingly suggests a complex, branching bush of diverse hominins who sometimes coexisted, competed, and interbred. Homo erectus represents not a failed experiment or an evolutionary dead end, but rather a crucial foundation upon which later human diversity would build. High-altitude adaptation. One fascinating aspect of Homo erectus that we haven't yet explored is their apparent adaptability to extreme elevations. Recent discoveries suggest that Homo erectus managed to colonize high-altitude environments much earlier than previously thought. Archaeological evidence from the Tibetan Plateau indicates that hominins were living at elevations above 4,000 meters as early as 16 million years ago, a time when Homo erectus was the predominant hominin species in East Asia. Living at such high altitudes presents serious physiological challenges. Modern humans who aren't adapted to high elevations experience hypoxia, oxygen deficiency, which can cause altitude sickness, reduced physical capacity, and even life-threatening conditions, like pulmonary or cerebral edema. The fact that Homo erectus apparently managed to survive in these environments suggests they may have developed biological adaptations to cope with reduced oxygen levels, adaptations that may have later been passed down to modern high-altitude populations through interbreeding or shared ancestry. This high-altitude colonization demonstrates yet another way in which Homo erectus proved remarkably adaptable, pushing into environments that would have seemed forbidding to earlier hominin species, from seaside environments to mountains, from tropical forests to open savannas. Homo erectus managed to thrive across an astonishing range of habitats, versatility that foreshadowed the global spread of later human species. Aquatic resources and brain development, another area of ongoing research concerns Homo erectus's relationship with water beyond the evidence for possible seafaring mentioned earlier. Some researchers have proposed what's known as the aquatic ape hypothesis to explain certain Homo erectus traits. This controversial theory suggests that some human characteristics, including our relative hairlessness, subcutaneous fat distribution, and voluntary breath control, might have evolved during a phase when our ancestors spent significant time in shallow water environments, perhaps wading, swimming, and foraging for marine resources. While mainstream paleoanthropology has largely rejected the strongest versions of this hypothesis, there is growing evidence that coastal and riverine resources played an important role in Homo erectus subsistence strategies. Archaeological sites along ancient shorelines show evidence of shellfish consumption, fish processing, and other aquatic resource utilization dating back hundreds of thousands of years. The ability to exploit these rich food sources high in proteins and omega-3 fatty acids that support brain development may have provided crucial nutritional advantages. Some researchers speculate that access to these brain-boosting nutrients might have contributed to the encephalization increasing brain size that characterizes Homo erectus evolution. Emotional and social lives we've focused extensively on Homo erectus biology and technology, but what about their potential emotional and social lives? While we can never know with certainty the inner experiences of extinct species, the archaeological evidence provides some tantalizing clues. The care for injured and disabled individuals mentioned earlier suggests social bonds that transcended mere survival utility. The fact that Homo erectus groups supported members who could no longer fully contribute to subsistence activities indicates emotional attachments and perhaps even concepts of reciprocal care that extended beyond immediate family units. Some sites also suggest possible ritual behaviors. The arrangement of stone tools and animal remains at certain Homo erectus sites shows patterns that seem deliberate rather than purely functional. While we should be cautious about projecting modern human symbolic thinking onto ancient species, these patterns hint at the beginnings of ritualized behaviors that might have reinforced group identity and social cohesion. The possible collection and modification of objects without obvious utilitarian purpose, like the ochre pigments and potentially symbolic items mentioned earlier, further suggests that Homo erectus may have possessed the cognitive foundations for aesthetic appreciation and perhaps even rudimentary symbolic thought. These capacities, while likely much less developed than in modern humans, would represent a crucial step toward the rich symbolic and cultural worlds that characterize later human species. Conceptual frameworks and mimetic culture. An intriguing area of speculation concerns how Homo erectus might have understood their world without complex language or writing. Their conceptual frameworks would have been primarily rooted in direct experience rather than abstract categorization. Their knowledge would have been deeply embedded in specific landscapes, passed down through demonstration and imitation rather than explicit instruction. Some cognitive archaeologists suggest that Homo erectus may have possessed what's called mimetic culture, the ability to represent knowledge through intentional bodily movements like gesture, dance, and non-linguistic vocalization. This form of communication, more sophisticated than that of great apes but less complex than fully syntactic language, would have allowed them to share information about tool-making techniques, hunting strategies, and environmental knowledge. This mimetic capacity might explain how Homo erectus managed to maintain relatively consistent tool-making traditions across vast geographic areas and time periods without written instructions or complex verbal explanations. The stability of their technological traditions over hundreds of thousands of years suggests effective systems for knowledge transmission that relied primarily on observation and imitation. Social structure and group dynamics. The social structure of Homo erectus groups remains speculative, but some clues come from comparisons with both great apes and modern hunter-gatherers, as well as from the archaeological record itself. The sexual dimorphism in Homo erectus, while less pronounced than in great apes, suggests males were somewhat larger than females, which might indicate social structures with some degree of male dominance or competition. However, the cooperative hunting strategies evidenced at sites like Olorgesailie in Kenya suggest coordination between multiple individuals, a level of collaboration that typically requires relatively egalitarian social relations. The most likely scenario is that Homo erectus lived in small, flexible bands with fluid membership, similar to but perhaps less complex than those of modern hunter-gatherers. Within these groups, knowledge about resources, territories, and techniques would have been shared through direct demonstration and accumulated through experience. Elders might have held particular value as repositories of environmental knowledge, knowing where to find water during droughts, which plants were edible in different seasons, or how to predict animal migrations based on subtle environmental cues.